Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I'm Supreet from the IMK PJP1 batch, and I've been working in human resources for 18 plus years and have worked with well established companies as well as startup companies across IT, pharma, energy, and banking. I've worked across all areas in HR, talent acquisition, HR policy and design, rewards and recognition, performance management, employee engagement, and talent management. I love reading books and I indulge in every form of exercise, be it HIIT, cardio dance, bar, yoga, strength training, etc. The lockdown has forced me to cook dishes which I used to eat at restaurants earlier. COVID 19 is impacting us from all angles: business model disruption, home and work life, and even how we get our food. In this session, we will be talking about how organizations are supporting employees physically and psychologically. As leaders, how can we support ourselves and others? And will this pandemic influence or transform our working culture? Today's special class is on people's pulse in the pandemic. I would like to thank you for posing interesting and insightful questions on the idea board. We will try to address most of them here. And who better than our own organizational behavior and HR professors? Our first panelist is Professor Payal. She has 4.5 years of work experience in teaching and research. She has done her PhD from IIM Indore in the area of workplace loneliness. She has also worked with IIM Raipur and Flame University Pune. She's a certified personal profile analysis practitioner and emotional intelligence assessor. Some of her research areas include loneliness, personality, and interpersonal relationships at work. She passionately loves cats and would like to create a cat rescue team given the dearth of cat rescuers and foster homes in Calicut. Welcome, Professor. Our
Thank
second
you.
panelist is Professor Krishnan TM, who is a faculty in the OBHR area since 13 years. He's done extensive teaching and research in the area of human resource management, talent management, and performance management. He has also undertaken consulting assignments in the areas of HR policy, implementation, training evaluation, organizational restructuring, and performance management. He has published in top ranked HRM journals such as HRM Review, the International Journal of HRM, Employee Relations, etc. He's passionate about working in the soil and nurturing plants. He also plays and follows chess.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Supreet.
Professor.
Thank you.
And a third panelist is Professor Surya Prakash. He's been teaching HRM at IIM Kozhikode across programs for 8.5 years. A keen student of human psychology and political processes in organizations, his passion in life is to create happy spaces for individuals, whether at work, on the street, or at home. In tune with this objective, he researches in the area of employee engagement, spirituality in management, as well as labor relations. When he's not planning for a class, he's planning for a trip. And when not at home, he can be found in the hills. And that is why we find him at home because of the virus now. Welcome, everyone, and let us jump in right away.
Thank you. Thank you.
The forces that shape corporate strategies, technology, the competitive landscape, geopolitics, demographic shifts are continuously changing. And today, they are more volatile and disruptive than ever, with a new force to reckon with: the coronavirus pandemic. How are organizations reinventing themselves from a people perspective? I will invite Professor Surya to answer this. Professor Surya, please.
Well, Supreet, it's a beautiful question. Let me actually begin by telling a story, a Panchatantra story, which actually I keep on telling to many students. Of course, I draw different lessons from the same story. So I will draw another lesson here today. It's a very famous story, a story of two swans and a tortoise who were friends and who were living by a lake. And one fine day, they discovered that the lake is drying up, and the swans wanted to have a greener pasture. So they wanted to fly away. And the tortoise said, "Hey, you can't leave me. I'm your friend. But the tortoise said, "You can't fly." But the swan said, "You can't fly." So then the tortoise said, "Why don't we think about something?" So they innovated. You know what did they innovate? They got a stick, and the swans, both the swans are holding at the two ends of the stick, and the tortoise was biting the stick on the middle, and they flew away. Now the flying is good and everything was good till they were flying over a village, and then it was an amazing sight. You know, a tortoise hanging between two swans, and people started booing and shouting, and the tortoise felt not right. He opened his mouth to rebuke those people. Before he started to speak anything, he fell to his death. The point is, there was innovation, but at the same time, there is no life. There was no life. The tortoise actually ended up losing his life. So innovation is not everything. You know, today we are talking in the pandemic about innovations, human competences, technology. Everything is good, but innovations is not sufficient. Systems actually save life, not innovation. So innovation comes from brain, from thinking. Systems come from learning. The tortoise didn't learn, but this while they innovated, innovations help you to maybe sort of protect yourself, but systems let you live. The point is why I'm narrating the story is how do we deal, or how organizations or human beings can reorient themselves depends on our learning from the past, because from the past we will end up getting learning of how to build a system for the future or for this pandemic. So the past of mankind, has not seen this such a pandemic for the first time. The 1918, pandemic was there, Spanish flu pandemic. Even in Bombay, in the late 19th century, we had, bubonic plague, which actually entered the city of Bombay. Taj Hotel was, built after that. The point is, kindly understand, the US suffered $3.2 billion loss in the 1918 pandemic. And also a little city of called in Arkansas, called the Little Rock, the retail sales went to 40 to 70% dollars up, 40 to 70% down. $10,000 a day loss was registered by all these retail sales. I'm talking about 1918. We can calculate the value today. So point is the sales, the mistakes, the problems that we see mankind has faced today. The problem is we are in the storm, so it feels like a timeless storm. It is not timeless at all. Now, how do we actually help us out, help ourselves out? So there were three learning that the US pandemic actually taught, or the Spanish flu pandemic. Remember, it coincided with World War One. The first thing they found after the pandemic, or sometime in the late during the pandemic, is they did not have infrastructure. As in North Carolina, they did not have medicines, they did not have medics, they did not have beds. You know what we faced in Delhi a few months ago, and what we are still facing in a number of states today in India. They did not have any of these things. Not only that, we are also having, so there was a person, the U.S. General, Surgeon General Rupert Plum. He realized that for all this, for predicting this particular pandemic, we need to have future pandemics. We need to have a system and an infrastructure. So apart from medicines and medics and all those all those health infrastructure, they also had something called a precursor to what we have as CDC, Center for Drug Control. That is there today in Atlanta, in US. So that is the first thing. Infrastructure is necessary. Unfortunately, most of our states, most of our country do not. Most of our country looks, it's part of chaos because we do not have necessary infrastructure. The second part is integration. In the US, the southern part of the US was very, very different from, was more anti the center or anti the federal structure because they were worried about being completely, imposed by the center. So they were registering everything till the pandemic actually started. And the pandemic revealed that there was no integration of information between the center and the states. And that is why the South, the US South, suffered the most of the losses. So the point is somehow, while all this political process and everything, and even organizations, today we listen that this MNC is donated this much money, that MNC is doing ventilators, all good. But these are all patchwork. We need an integration. How, organizations have a bigger purpose than employing people and then producing something for themselves. There needs to be part of this national development scenario, and how this integration can be solidified needs to be thought about. And the last one is repositioning of the products. The US pandemic, I was discussing with a few of my friends. Most of us actually use today those, this paper, the napkins that we use, or the tissue paper. The tissue paper was originally, was brought about for cleaning up your cold creams. The US pandemic required disposable handkerchiefs, and the tissue paper was repositioned as a disposable handkerchief. If today you're wiping your nose and you're wiping your spit and everything and throwing it away, you should thank the US pandemic. It has repositioned the product. Even a product like Listerine was repositioned as, to save themselves from the streetcar cold. It was a cold product rather than a mouth freshener product. So the existing product should be aligned. Marketing strategies need to be rethought about how it is helping the right to live, the right to life. If health and life are put in center, most of the businesses can actually survive. But this I give it to my fellow panelists to take it up.
So, thank you, Professor Surya, for bringing this up. Adding to what he said, Supreet, I would also like to add, adopting system thinking and adapting to future of work. So, definitely, organizations are striving to build the capability to move with speed and agility. And let's confess this: the companies who had planned for contingent solutions or had, let's say, business continuity plan ahead of COVID, they definitely got an upper hand in dealing with the situation. So, think about the companies like Tesla, Ford, General Motors, or specifically in India, let's talk about DRDO. They started producing ventilators even when it's not their core business. So, so I'll give you another example from one of my recent conversations with the CTO of Singapore-based company. They work on niche technology and has a small team of competent and trained engineers. Now, just like any other company, this company faced manpower issues. And most of their engineers, what happened is they were not able to come to the work to perform the task. And these tasks required them to be on site. So, what would you do in this situation? Obviously, instead of creating the product on site, they have to look for some solution. So what they did is they taught their clients or subcontractors how to work on these technologies. So mainly, let me put it in a way that they outsourced it. So they offer trainings to their subcontractors to work around the technology. They created single coordination centers so that there is less requirement of manpower. So my focus is on adaptability and business continuity plan. So I would stop by saying that BCM is more like having a health insurance. So which means you really do not fall sick every year, but with an insurance you are safe and covered if and when you fall sick. So BCM or business continuity plan can be interpreted similarly.
Yeah, I think that's a good background to the pandemic, especially Surya talked about what happened in the US, and Payal also elaborated on how organizations have been dealing with, especially in the idea of BCM. I'd look at specifically the HR or people management and work practice related issues. And two social changes that we see distinctly, which is likely to have a long term impact, not just looking at this pandemic, but also even post pandemic. One is the idea that most of us now are concerned with health issues, safety issues. And the second is also the role of telecommunications or technology in general. Like, for example, we are able to speak, communicate now remotely, and also collaborate our work remotely. Of course, that is one aspect of technology. The second is also we use apps for different things. We are doing a 10,000 step, we count the number of steps. So technology in some sense has not only facilitated communication, collaboration, but also kind of helps us in our personal decisions. We count our calories, at least the youngsters do. And that has also impacted the way we respond. So looking back to the work context, I'll take on from this. If you look at the safety and health concerns, one statistic or one news that came up recently, Dabur Chyawanprash announced that in this lockdown period, their sales of Chyawanprash increased by 400%. And also, I've been talking to some of the dealers, Ayurvedic dealers, and locally, especially in Kerala, we have strong network of Ayurvedic shops, and they have been saying that it has been phenomenal in the last few months. So one thing that comes out is Of course, people are concerned with health, especially in terms of prevention of disease per se. Because in a disease like this, COVID, we don't really have a cure. And people are also concerned that this might be a possibility in the future. So that's a trend I see is likely to be longer held rather than just this pandemic. Coming back to the technology front, we already find that work from home is, at least in the knowledge work context, it's a new normal. You have TCS, for example, announcing that they'll have 75% to work from home in the next 5 years. And other IT companies are also doing that. You have education now delivered online, school and college classes delivered. You have consultants doing consultancy work. They are doing coaching or mentoring online, onboarding, performance appraisal, P&D, etc. So a lot of these things are online. But there is a paradox here. And the paradox is that most of us, at least in the larger, say, IT or consulting or knowledge space, the larger companies have invested quite a bit on the workplace infrastructure. When I say this infrastructure, it's an ergonomic kind of a work environment. It's the gym or the cafeteria, etc. And you don't. The paradox is that you don't really have those kind of facility at home. Right? Most of our homes are not designed for work, or we don't have workspace in mind when we build a house. So suddenly we are in a situation where we'll have to do the work with probably a furniture or sitting in a couch, which is not really meant for working for a long time. And similarly, other ergonomics or even food, for instance. So, what I find likely to occur in the future is the work from home per se might translate into remote work kind of a situation where, especially companies who want flexibility, might opt for leasing out smaller workplaces rather than a big IT park. You'll have smaller workspaces coming up, which has an ambience or infrastructure very similar to a large workspace. So that's one trend that I see, which is very distinct. That's the work or the larger work context. When you look at what happens within the organization, you have, say, recruitment, for instance, happening remotely. So you could scout for talent, irrespective of where the talent is located, if you are working on a remote mode. Similarly, performance appraisal, T&D are happening online. So what is important is, at least from a decision making, there is a lot of technology coming in. When I look at, say, HR decision making, if I want to assess talent, there are tools available which can even quantify the soft skills. One of our own alumni, Shubesh, has been working on developing one of the enterprises around that. And I see that's one of the futures. So not only technology which is facilitating work in terms of communication collaboration tools, but also technology helping us to make good decisions about people and talent. That's the other area. So of course I can continue on the teamwork, but
Okay.
that's, I think, something which.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I saw some diverse perspectives coming on the first, us linking the story and then the BCP and then how social changes and organizational changes are happening. And definitely, companies who were shy or wary of giving work from home to their employees have suddenly devised, all these functional strategies where people are working remotely, and because they know, this is the truth of the situation, and the new normal is the new now, and it'll be the new future. So, and so most of the companies are planning to continue employees working from home, who can do their 100% work from home. It'll save a lot on the infrastructure cost as well for the companies. Also, I think they've been flatter hierarchies now, and because in virtual situations it's very difficult to accelerate the decision making if the organizational structures don't become flat. And of course automation is one of the areas where if every company is trying to do the best for their employees and giving the best what they can give to the employees. And rightly said, Professor Krishnan, we are not geared up to work from home, but I think now companies are supporting employees. They're giving even chairs, ergonomically designed chairs for them to work, because they have to sit there minimum 8 to 10 hours at home and work. So that leads to the next question, about the VUCA world, and this is not something new. We've been speaking about what volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and how do the leaders react to it. They have to develop competencies of agility, resilience, adaptivity. So a global pandemic of this proportion has not been experienced by most of us in our lifetimes. And the Indian mindset of work is being challenged continuously. What are some of the competencies that leaders or individuals need to tide over this phase? And how can the managers motivate and bond with virtual teams? This is for this question, I'll invite Professor Krishnan to begin the discussion, and then other professors can join in.
Interestingly, I think the fundamentals of at least teamwork or effectiveness would still remain the same. But what has changed is, of course, the use of technology in doing this. So I'll start with an example of what Google did. So this was widely reported in New York Times a few years back. And as we all know, this Google is an organization which is data centric. They collect a lot of information. They can analyze patterns pretty well. And what they did was to look at the question of which team was the most effective amongst 100 odd teams that they had. So they collected all the data that is available in terms of the team demography, the team dynamics, how often they met, what is the composition of the team, what is the gender and age, etc. But to cut this long story short, uh, irrespective of how you kind of dissect the data in terms of personality characteristics or demographics or team dynamics, they still couldn't find what the exact reason is, because you have people which had a very diverse team perform well, very homogeneous team also performed well. But so what was the reason? And what they found was the pattern which emerged uh, after a fair bit of data analysis is teams which essentially had a fair bit of, I'll say, negotiation or throwing up uh, issues to the foreground are likely to be much more impactful. So let me give you an example. If there is an issue which is likely to become a major deterrent for the team performance, it might delay the team. People are able to speak it out. They are okay. They are open to do that. So they are able to criticize some of the decisions of their team members. At the same time, they are open to the suggestions of the others. So what they called it as psychological safety. And this is a concept which is very, very well researched in academics, especially by Edmondson at Harvard. And she has done quite a bit of research in this. She's also looked at other teams in hospitals, etc. So I think this would still remain in terms of a key idea of team effectiveness. There are likely to be other areas like shared focus. You need all the team members to have a similar focus on the objectives of the team. You need also team members to have individual responsibilities and accountability specified. So you can't really have a blurred role definition. So you have to have ideas of who is to do what and how are they going to collaborate. So these issues would still be pertinent, but one thing that I find is when you are going on a virtual mode, you're likely to be very task focused. And especially if you have members coming in newly, like we have many of these IT companies onboarding employees, and they haven't really met the others in the workspace. So how do you develop the psychological safety aspect? That's something which is of concern. So one of the ways to do is to have a kind of I'll say a spread out onboarding where you have at least senior members talk to them, talk to what are the issues they face, and also have members who are fairly familiar to work in the first instance. You also have at least the team meetings. There is a casual talk that comes up. You try to start with the casual talk before you go on to the task at hand. You could have offsites. Now, probably the workspaces, at least in the pandemic time, could be off spaces. You have smaller teams coming up to work sites and have the offsites and then work remotely. So these are a few suggestions there.
So, thanks, Professor Krishnan, for especially bringing up the point of psychological safety. So, I would just like to add a little bit from the angle of social psychological issues that employees might face. So, no doubt work from home has increased productivity on an average, but we need to understand that it has come with its own cost. So let me put it in this way that we are social animals and we have an innate need to belong. So, mostly what happens is an employee spends more time at their workplaces than at home. So team dynamics or bondings is central to their on-the-job experience. So if you see from that angle, probably I would say that a cohesive team has a better sense of common purpose. Now let's see what's happening currently. You might be at home, but you are sitting in front of your laptop for let's say more than 12 hours. You might be around your family members, but mostly they're not able to understand your professional issues. So I think one key problem here that I feel is important to look upon is absence of meaningful relationships. And let me put it in this way that absence of meaningful relationship makes people very lonely. And this has been my research area for almost a decade now, and I can tell you that once loneliness creeps in, it makes you feel miserable. In fact, we have evidences that chronic loneliness leads to severe depression. So I personally think that nothing can replace human to human interaction. But given that we do not have any choice, probably we need to accept the current situation and look for a better future, I would say.
Well, both my colleagues have actually brought about very, very powerful points. But before I answer, we should understand what's the meaning of a team first. Remember, there is something called reverse Marx. Reverse Marx is Marx. Karl Marx always talks about, classless society. But remember, we are not defined by for classless society. Our products, our homes, everything we do are meant to differentiate. The other word of differentiate is standing out. So that is why we aspire for better organizations, better teams within the organizations, even better wives, better husbands, because that is what differentiation is, right? So point is, this is the problem. Teams are not simply a means to get work done. Teams are also a method to standing out inside a work context. That is how we identify ourselves. For example, with the Chandrayaan 2 actually, overgoing, it is a different thing. I belong to the mission control, or I belong to the flight team, or I belong to this team, that team. I belong to the Land Rover team. All right. So these are a few things how we identify ourselves. It may not be a prestigious, but still it's our identity. Now, when we do not go to the workplace context, remember that is why our identity becomes very fuzzy, because what we see is our spouse before us and not our team member. So we are always in a dilemma whether we are in a working mode or whether we are in a home mode. So that is why the commitment towards work actually goes down, right? So the point is, how do I actually get back to the commitment towards work? Two things. There is no rocket science, because I cannot see the person, I cannot tell much. So the two things that we need to do is, the first one is we should always focus for effectiveness and not efficiency. Too much of work is not possible when you're doing at home, but small projects, lesser amount of projects, useful projects, prioritized projects can definitely help. Taking one or two goals for a single day and trying to attack this, or solve the or meet the deadlines, is going to be more productive and is going to be much more helpful, rather than taking a lot of work on your plate, right? The second one we have to do is what Professor Krishnan said. Your goal setting should be really well defined, because we exactly need to know how much work I'm doing. And remember, in the absence of a supervisor, or in absence of a team leader, in absence of a project manager, the goal itself is going to lead the person. And it has to be so spend more time in goal setting, and allow people to set their own timeline, and allow them to actually to drive the goal. Focus more on trying to become better in something rather than solving too many things. That is what I have to say.
Thank you all. And I think there are some very valid and very beneficial ideas which I'm hearing here. And I would like to thank the audience because I'm seeing such lovely comments. Thanks, Ankur, Amitabh, Upneet. And we have one question which I would like to address here. If culture, innovation, and empathy are to be driven within organizations, How will this now be done effectively when it appears organizations may be way decentralized owing to work from home options? This is by Shaunak Ray. Thanks, Shaunak, for the question. If Professor, as you don't mind, I would like to, talk about this.
Go ahead.
Um, I think leaders have a social responsibility, and it becomes very important at this point now to set an example and act deliberately. And when I say that, I mean, they should not be sending emails and messages at all hours of the day and night, because that will set an expectation that employees also need to do the same. So I think as a leader, as a manager, we need to be very careful on what precedents are we setting. The second thing what I've realized is we need to appreciate and motivate more, our teams when we were in office is to be simpler, because we just used to go there and say, okay, good job done, prompt response, okay, even a single line would have made a difference. But in the remote working style, what I have seen in at least my organization, there's less of appreciation because we are just doing our work, talking, meeting, firefighting. So I actually introduce this, that people should be motivating and praising their teams. And in Microsoft Teams there's a feature where you can actually send stickers of praise, of leadership, saying good communication. So I think we should start doing that now, appreciating more. And the third thing which the leaders should do is set expectations. There should be consistent communication and there should be frequent check-ins. So this is something we as managers should do. And there's one novel idea wherein we in when I was really in early in my career, I had this one project called sensing, which was to talk to employees and understand how motivated they are. Okay, so I feel this is a time where we really need this one person who can, kind of gauge the employee pulse during this time. And it should not be the manager, or might not be the HR. It could be somebody who's an influencer, who's popular with people. They can just talk to people and, see where the employee engagement is, and if we need to reach out to someone. So these are some of my comments. I don't know if professors, any one of you wants to add something here. Okay, then let's proceed to the sorry. Okay, let's proceed to the next topic, which is actually we've been seeing this. We've been seeing what a stressful situation everybody is facing, even the celebrities. You can, because we hear things about celebrities, so we um, know about so much of suicide cases and depression cases. So people are uneasy because they don't know what the future holds. The fact that no one knows how this is going to shake out only increases their uncertainty and therefore anxiety. Many organizations have increased communication and introduced employee assistance programs to help their employees. Do you think this is enough? And how do you think we can help people mitigate or lower stress? I will, invite Professor Payal to answer this.
Thanks, Supreet, for this question. In fact, yes, it's difficult to cope, right? So let me start by citing one very recent research that intrigued me. This was done in an American context, and they found that around 70% of US workers said that COVID has been the most stressful time of their entire profession. In fact, when they compared it with the Great Recession and September 11 terrorist attack, they found, COVID has much more severe impact than other events. Now, what happened is after digging a little bit further, I just became curious to understand in Indian context what's going on, what's Indian psyche like. So what I did is I analyzed around 1 lakh tweets and observed, after the analyzing the tweets, I observed 5 important aspects that I would like to quote here. So work life issues, frustration, exhaustion, both mental and physical, fear of job loss and fear of unknown, and loneliness. These were the top 5 factors that had come out of the analysis that I did with the tweets. Now, if you dig deeper, you would realize that the common denominator of all these issues that I figured out is basically stress. Now, obviously, I cannot say that do not stress out or stress can be ignored. Probably not, because in the current time, stress is inevitable. So, I would say the trick here is to see how endured you are or how resilient you are to stress. So, just a simple task for the audience here. Let's ask ourselves these a few of these questions. So ask yourself, how resilient are you? Do you take actions to solve a problem or not? In stressful situations, are you able to calm yourself down? Do you look for alternative solutions when you meet stressors? And last but not the least, do you have faith in yourself that things will be fine? And if most of the answers are affirmative, it's good news. It's good news for people, they are going in the right direction. Else, probably, I would say you're in a rough spot, and you might have to consider working on areas for improvement. Now, obviously, this is a broad topic and it's absolutely difficult to cover each and every aspect of it. But I just thought I'll give a few suggestions when we talk about improving resilience. The good part here is, unlike personality traits that cannot be changed much, I would say resilience is an ability and it can be improved and built. Some of the things that you can maybe do very consciously and with careful efforts, probably you would be able to improve on stress. So, for example, I would say acceptance is the key. So just accept what you are feeling right now instead of fighting it. Many of us have this habit of, putting labels onto our emotions: good emotion, bad emotion. Oh, I'm feeling gloomy right now. It's really bad for my health. And believe me, the perception that stress is negative is more disastrous than having actual stress. So, first thing is accept it and do not label it. I would also suggest that I have seen people around me, my friends, and my acquaintances and colleagues. They have this habit of comparing themselves with others. Now, do not do that. Why? Simple reason is, let's understand different people have different coping mechanisms. So probably the way you react, it's more like fight or flight. So probably the way you react to the stresses might be different from somebody else. So rather than comparing, I would suggest it's important to find out what works for you. So work on that rather. The other thing, which I think is no rocket science, everybody knows about it: communicate. Just figure out that one person who listens to you without judging you, and just vent out your feelings. So figure out who are your trust circles, who is your power base, who is your confidant, and just speak it out. Another thing which we have, this is kind of a hot topic now: practicing mindfulness. So my friends, every time I suggest them, they always say, we don't have time to sit and meditate. But I'm just giving you some, quick ideas as to how can one practice mindfulness. So very simple things like, slow down, pause, or take a deep breath every time you are in a difficult situation. Try to be in the moment, and in fact, just try to connect with nature. Most importantly, I would say take out time to disconnect from the world, and especially your devices, your electronic gadgets, post work hours. So these are some of the things I think if you consciously work upon, probably it's a indication that we are working in right direction, and probably we would be able to improve on resilience. So be grateful for what you have. Look at every stressor as an opportunity to improve yourself. And I would also say that remember that you are not alone in this journey. All of us are sailing in the same boat. So yeah. So resilience, I would say, is the key here.
Well, it's a very good point by Professor Payal. Just to extend their thought and just to put some illustrations. Do you realize that the best of the books and the literature that we read today were once upon a time written in the prisons, when people were inside the prison, away from the world, locked out? I mean, we are locked out, out of fear or by the government, but they were locked in definitely for supposed crimes that they believe they have not committed, but the government believes that they have committed. For example, if you have read about Veer Savarkar, Savarkar's Essentials of Hindutva, he's an atheist by the way, was written in Ratnagiri when he was inside the prison, even in 1922. And Mahatma Gandhi's the story of my experiments with truth was written in Yarwada's prison in 1932, if I recall correctly. And even Nelson Mandela's conversation with myself was a completely prison manual. So please understand, people, do you think our stress was more than these individuals who were definitely, in a kalapani or somewhere inside a prison with no facilities and with toilets, of questionable standards. You do not even have choice of whom do you meet, right? So there is no way. So this point is, remember, people have dealt with those stress, and how do we deal them? We've learned from those lives. So there are three ways to do that. The first one is there's a routine. You need to have a routine. The point is, the pandemic had disturbed our routine. That is why we have this stressful encounters. There's a reason why routines are important. Once upon a time, our parents actually used to force us, get up by 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, get, or go for exercise, brush, get ready for school, college, work, whatever it is, right? The routine actually helps us to transition our mind from our separate identity. We are an individual wearing multiple shirts. So we have to make a choice what shirt to wear. And if the choice is so difficult, then we definitely get actually stressed out. So routine actually helps us to wear an appropriate shirt or an appropriate mask at any given point of time. So although you are locked in, so please follow a routine. Get up, whatever time is to get in, you wanted to get up or you used to get up. Get ready for office as you used to be. Many organizations actually help, asking people to do that. Wear formals or smart casuals as used to work. And go to a corner of your room, and convert this into office and start working. I'm not telling it is easy, because if you have a child or multiple children, then they're definitely going to bargain, but at least you still get some idea about how to take control of your life. The second one is that, so all the prisoners in the story, the three examples I gave, they definitely had a routine, and all the writings used to happen in the daylight hours. In the night time, they never used to get any light. Second thing that you can do is, as Professor Pyle rightly said, is, she said communicate, I will say relate. But when I say relate, please understand it's not through WhatsApp or Facebook. It is not try to be peep into somebody else's life. It is try to get back to real talking. So pick up the phone, take out a school album, start talking, making build back your relationships. Those relationships which you never got a chance to actually rekindle because of your work hours, because of other things in your life. Maybe this is the time. Chat up with your school friend, talk about the teacher, have some conversations, laugh, joke. This is one way where you can actually relate back, or have maybe meaningful conversations with your spouse. Take up that movie, and not alone but with your spouse. So these are the things to actually help. And the last one is engage. Engage is very important. When I say engage, can you understand, we have to learn new skills, and that is where it is important. The individuals stay motivated if they have new things to learn. But the pandemic actually made most of us, into chefs in our home. That is one new skill. Every new skill need not be in a Coursera or need not have any correlation with how it is going to help in my job. So that is very, very instrumental way of looking at life. Gardening or bringing a new pot, looking at how a plant actually grows. All these things actually can actually help you. So to doing something by your hand matters. You actually end up becoming much more, feel useful than perpetually sitting before a laptop and typing away messages. Understand this. So three things: have a routine, learn how to relate maybe with old relations, and learn to engage and take up a new skill. So these are the three ways by which you can sort of control the stress that you have in your life. So that's my submission.
Just have a quick point here, uh, because I think these points are very well covered in terms of how to handle. And it was interesting when Surya mentioned about these creative aspects. Uh, when somebody wrote a book, I represent. A lot of times, what we generally use is the logical mind or the rational mind, which is the left brain. But then there's also a time where the right brain activities could be taken up very actively. It could be dance or music. So essentially, making sure that you have some rest for the left brain is what at least the present times calls for. So it could be just working in the soil or nurturing a plant, and that's healing in itself. I think, yeah, apart from, of course, yoga or meditation and classical music or arts, etc.
Thank you, professors. We have one question from Mahesh Parmeshwaran. How can a spouse support his or her companion emotionally when work comes home. So I think partly Professor Surya, was talking about it. Have some activities which you do together as a family. Why not? Why just spouse? If you have a kid, involve them too. And I think it's both ways. Like Professor Payal had 3 hours lecture, and she had a bad throat, and her husband was getting lemon water for her just before the call. So that's how you help each other. And when I have my meetings that continue through the afternoon, it's my husband who's cooking. And if when he is busy, I'm the one who takes up some work he is supposed to do. So it has to be complementing each other, it has to be supporting each other, and not just physically but emotionally as well, because everybody has stress under these situations, I think. And stress is not bad, it's not bad. You just should recognize the symptoms. Okay, you're getting under stress, and how you should manage it. And I think Professor Surya just mentioned a lot of things. So yeah, hobbies are the one thing that really really ground you and help manage your stress. So I think that is one thing. And for me, exercise, I do my exercise, and I'm like quite happy throughout the day. So these are some of the things which you can do. And of course, a few emojis will not really substitute for professional compliments. For that, like Professor Surya suggested, you need to pick up the phone, talk to people. And this is necessary in this time. Every day you have to speak to your you have to make a rotation plan. Okay, today I'm going to speak to this person, tomorrow I'm going to speak to this person, and connect emotionally, not just where are you, what is the status of the work, but even professionally. Now we start all our calls with how people are doing, are they safe. So these are some of the things we can do. If anybody wants to add something, please add here. Okay. So we move on to the next question. And Raghu, thanks, Raghu, for the question. We actually, the next question is what you've written here. Raghu Vasu has asked, can the panel share their thoughts on how they see the pandemic influencing career choices? Do you see a shift in the fascination with STEM careers? Along with this, I would also like to, add student careers here, because, I believe students would be here in the audience as well, and they need this sort of guidance. And also, let's talk about women, how this is impacting their careers, and will this lead to a better gender equality? So I would invite Professor Krishnan to start, begin this answering the question.
Yeah, it looks like STEM would definitely have some good fortunes in the future, because right now technology is leveraged quite a bit extensively. You have electronic gadgets all around the place, and technology, of course, is one area. But then, going from a human perspective, who are the people who are likely to do well, especially when you're remotely working and you really don't have a fixed time routine? So we used to have a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 8, but then you might have an email at 8 o'clock in the night and you still have to respond to that. So you have fluid timings, and you also have probably meetings scheduled even in the later hours. So what happens in that kind of situation? There's an interesting research that I would like to highlight here, which is about two sets of people. One are the guys who are work-life balancers, who like to have fixed schedule for their work, might be say 8 to 6. Then post-work, I'm not really concerned about what's happening at work. And then there are these guys who are integrators, who are okay with doing some parts of their personal aspects in the work routine, along with the work routine, and vice versa. Even later in the evening, they are okay with doing some aspects of work. Definitely, at least what we can see, this mode of work continues quite extensively. The integrators are likely to do quite well. And at least as a society, Indians are used to having few personal chats, conversation, or few errands, personal errands done. So to that extent, as a society, I feel that we are likely to do well in this. But going back to this question on women, uh, I have a slightly counterintuitive response, because if you look at what happened during the pandemic, uh, You have, of course, the family members or everyone at home. You have children working or learning from home, and you also don't have restaurants open, so you can't really order meals. You don't have maids coming in. So essentially, I think a large part of the responsibilities were handled by women, and that has definitely increased the stress, at least for women. Even though we did have a lot of these memes talking about how a guy in the suit is responding to a meeting call at the same time cutting vegetables. I think that's a stereotype which is a stereotype, which is not really a fact. But then, if I look at say 6 months or even 1 month, 1 year down the line, I see a positive impact of the work from home, especially on the women's career. And I look at some research that I've done on this aspect. One is in terms of societal impact. If you look at least India in particular, public spaces are really not safe for women to travel. Right? Most of the public spaces, especially many parts of the metro cities, are really not good for women. At the same time, what's happening with the work environment is that there was an interesting research that I did with one of the major IT companies when we interviewed a lot of project managers and at various levels. And what we realized is when people assess the performance or potential, face time was important. Even if I did well as a woman, but I'm not available beyond 6 o'clock, I have to rush back home. That affects the potential assessment. So at least when you are working from home, that is an issue which is not likely to occur. At least you have outcomes that could be defined. And the second aspect which has impacted women's career is also that you don't really have a lot of women at senior positions for role modeling or networking or mentoring, that kind of a support. So again, with the use of technology, you can access women leaders across organizational hierarchies much more easily. So opportunities for networking also is likely to enhance. So what I see again from a work context is also from a societal context. This is likely to have a medium to long-term good impact.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Professor Krishnan answered most of the points. I just want to bring an example. I don't know how many of the people who are listening have heard about somebody called Subhashini Mistry. She was a Padma Shri awardee in 2018, and she is an Anguta chap from West Bengal who owns two hospitals, literally. Okay, so Subhashini Mistry became a widow in the ripe young age of 23 or 24 in 1970s West Bengal. When you become a widow in 1970s India at that young age, your straightforward profession is prostitution. But somehow she fought against that. She had four children. She put one child in this. Her husband died, by the way, died out of gastroenteritis. Nobody dies out of gastroenteritis. Subhashini's husband did because he didn't have money. Then she decided, okay, I have to look after my children, take forward this life. So she put the eldest born into an orphanage, and the other three she wanted to look after her, look herself. So what happened? Slowly she started, working as a maid in the houses of Calcutta, 100 rupees a day, 5 houses. Slowly she graduated to become a vegetable vendor. She started saving every money that she earned in a savings bank account. In 70s and 80s Calcutta, nobody had heard about mutual fund and investment. These are words of white collar jobs. And in any case, Subhashin would have never got anything. So by the way, she started saving. By 1992, she had saved 10,000 rupees. She went to her village, negotiated. Her version of negotiation is falling at the feet of the person who wanted to sell the land. Negotiated, this person, please give me this land, takes to 10,000 rupees. Finally, the person agreed. She got the land, then she gave away her entire land to the village, right? And so negotiated again with the villagers. Why don't you contribute and take this land and let's build an hospital? Nobody of us will actually ever be denied of finding any treatment. And Humanity Hospital was born in 1993. Looking after 250 patients free of cost. And the story doesn't end there. Her eldest born, in the orphanage, he also ended up becoming an MBBS doctor. Mother and son expanded this branch to Sundarbans, and they have one more hospital, two hospitals, an Anguta chap, literally. None of the people sitting here and listening, if you are a VC, venture capitalist, will ever fund her, venture. If I can call that venture. But she ended up doing it. Point is, we have to find something called meaning in life. The pandemic is a great way of finding meaning in life, right? If in the normal course of things, when you are embroiled on many things, we believe, the end of all this privilege, this IIM education, IIT education, any education cannot be a job. It is too mediocre an ambition. The end of all this is to live back and give back and leave a legacy. And Subhashini Mistry, with being an Anguta chap, if she can do that, I'm sure all of us can actually, tide away all this. There will be stress. Things are not going to be easy, but we can definitely tide over this. Maybe we can take inspiration from Subhashini Mistry. Thank you.
Thank you, professors. And we have two more questions. So I will address this to Professor Surya. And Professor Surya, maybe you can answer it in 2 minutes, but it's like a huge topic. But we got this on Idea Board. So thanks again for submitting questions there. So the question was, should we relax the labor laws in such situations? And especially, there's been a talk of deferment of the minimum wage rate. And so is this an anti-worker move or will it protect jobs?
Maybe Professor Krishnan can take it first, and then I'll come in.
Okay, so see the labor laws, especially say in this instance, we are looking at the wage rates. It does serve a social purpose in terms of ensuring that employment is fair in terms of wages given. But of course, the minimum wages and the fair rates and the market rates are likely to be very different. So my sense is, of course, the businesses, especially small to medium businesses, are impacted dramatically. Of course, the large businesses which have a fair bit of cash balance, they are able to survive with probably paying some half the wages or even sometimes full wages. But then the small to medium businesses are not likely to survive for a long time if this continues for a long time. What I also heard from some of the companies, especially small companies, they still have to pay their electricity bill, the monthly fixed charges. They have zero revenues, but that expense is still there. So my sense is you can look at some of the other expenses that the government can relax. And of course, the wage rate could still reflect what the market conditions are. If the market general wages are going down, the wage rate could be kind of redrafted based on these. So I look at both wage rate as a second initiative, and the first initiative making sure that there is a fair environment for businesses to flourish.
The pandemic actually is a great example of showing how our social security measures, although they were there, never really stood up to the test of the times, unfortunately. So when you have migrant laborers, walking all the way from, let's say, Delhi to Bihar, or from even, Kerala to, MP, it is, despite having all the social security measures, it is a problem. The point is, whether it is so, it is not a problem on the businesses. It is definitely a problem on the implementation side. So I will not vouch for the dilution of laws. Laws are policy statement, and they must survive for a length of time. Rather, we should be looking at for the execution part of it. It is really worrisome if the government of a day is not even knowing who is the thela wala who is in Bhubaneswar, for example. I'm going to pay you 10,000 rupees, but if I do not know where you stand, where your shop is, I do not even know your name, then it is going to be really problematic. So social security measures are there, money is there, but how this has to be diverted is something I'm more worried about. Regarding the wages and everything, there can be some temporary orders, temporary reliefs that can be given by the government, but it should not be diluted. Minimum wages actually give you a chance to live, a fair life, a good life, right? Having some calories of food and all those, other things. And in India, trust me, we have many places where still minimum wages are not given. So it affects straight right to life. So I will not want the laws to be diluted, but some sectors, the laws can be, orders can be passed, temporarily for the businesses to pick up. But and also more importantly, the social security measures should be, prepped up. That is, people should know who is living where and how I can reach this person and divert away, whatever savings, I have put in his name or put in her name, so that, in this time of pandemics, they can be looked after. These three things, are my humble submission.
Great. I think yes, we need to have a balance between the labor laws and how the benefits what the labor workforce will be getting because of these laws, and of course we also need to see the financial burden on the corporates and employers at this point in time. So yeah, this is an interesting question, and another interesting question which came on the idea board, and I want Professor Payal to answer it, is how to manage an employee who doesn't want to come to the office out of fear, but there's no scope of work from home for that person.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a similar question in the chat box as well. So let me just get this straight. I think there are two ways, despite all the measures that organizations are taking, for example, regular sanitizing or relying more on virtual meetings, etc. Despite that, if they are facing similar problems, probably I have two suggestions here. uh, One thing I would suggest is organizations can resolve these concerns on case to case basis. For example, their employees who are probably pregnant, or employees with kids at home, or old age people with nobody else to take care of, should be given some kind of flexibility. But along with it, they should be encouraged to take leaves without pay or avail the existing leaves. So that's first point. And I also think that it's high time to train people on their transferable skills. So recall, Supreet, the first example that I gave you in the beginning of the discussion on BCM. This is more on these lines. So, motivate, incentivize your people to take up new tools, learn new technologies, and, increase their domain knowledge. Um, some companies, in fact, are training their employees on, cross functionality, so that others can step in and get the job done when others are reluctant to turn up. So ultimately, see it again, it boils down to BCM that we discussed in the beginning. And so, yeah, these are the two cents from my side. And for GOT fans, I would say, in words of Little Finger, chaos is a ladder. So this is a chaotic time, and let's try to convert the challenges into opportunities. So I think these are the two important points I would like to put forward.
Okay, thanks, Professor Payal. And I will be ending the session in another minute. So, Professor Surya and Professor Krishnan, if you have any last comments, you can go ahead.
I would just like to expand on that aspect, because one of the concerns is also the safety of the workplace. So if the safety protocols are improved, and in fact, this could be an opportunity for many companies to look at creating a safety culture, especially in manufacturing. We had recent instances in Visakhapatnam of some disasters, and India is not really, at least now, culture safety is not a big concern in the society in general. But then that is going to be increasingly important. This is example of Alcoa, which is this aluminum company in the US, how when a new CEO took over, his primary objective was to focus on safety. Of course, if you are facing analysts who are dealing with stock markets, they are concerned with revenues, profitability, etc. But then this is a guy who is talking of safety. And then that's a good case study in terms of how, if there is a focus on one aspect here in safety, that could have a dramatic impact even on the long-term performance. So I would say that this is an opportunity to also experiment with culture change, provide a focus on safety and hygiene, ensure protocols, and also see what is the evolving situation, what are the new directions from the company, and respond to those.
Yeah, so the last words from me is very simple. You have to find your calling and you have to learn to be useful. So, business is not about technology, business is not about processes, business is about people. Somebody has to produce, somebody has to consume. And if you have something that is worth producing, please produce. If you have, if you have somebody, if you know somebody who can consume this, please reach out to this person. It can be through technology, can be without technology. Please understand, I don't know how many of you have heard about this guy called Avinash. Avinash is somebody who's a MasterChef India winner in the last season. The guy is an IT. I do not exactly recall either it's Wipro or Infosys. I may be wrong here, so I apologize. But you can Google this. So this guy is an IT, software developer, and he ended up competing in MasterChef India, and he also won it. So that is his competency. That is where he found his meaning. So please understand, this is where we have to do. A pandemic is a great way to get out of the cycle and learn to be useful, learn to rediscover yourself. And this is, please do not lose this opportunity, because when the entire economy opens up, we are back to the same business. And trust me, this entire opportunity of rediscovery is going to be lost out. Do not lose this. That's all my, the final words from Supreet.
Thank you so much, all of you. And I think, I wanted to comment on the gender equity and this question, but we are running out of time. And but we've had some beautiful examples from the professors, and it's been really, really, I feel really lucky to be have been moderating the session. So, just some last comments from me. Unusual times call for unusual measures and also provide unusual opportunities. This is the time to step up, step forward, and count it for doing something meaningful, something out of ordinary, something generous, something humane, or to support others who are taking the first steps towards tomorrow. So, whoever we are, wherever we have the choice to take ownership and be accountable. And in pandemic times, each of us can be a leaders. So thank you, professors, for sharing your wisdoms. Thank you, audience. We've had some lovely comments and lovely participation from the audience. Sorry we could not take up all your questions. I would like to name Mahesh, Biban, Shaunak, Ankur, Suresh, Upneet. We've got so many comments and questions from you, and maybe we'll do another session and have different set of questions, because yes, we focused on various topics consciously, because we just had 1 hour and we have exceeded that as well. So thank you all for joining in today. Stay safe, stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Supreet.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.